Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode. I am wanting to just share with you some thoughts that I have because we're heading into what I would call a season of portals. And I know that's often referred to when we talk about eclipses and eclipse season, but this is not just any eclipse season. And its entry begins actually with this equinox, which I talked a little bit in the week ahead about the equinox. And if you haven't had a chance to watch that, go back and watch that because I talk about it. But I'm going to give you some greater context for why these portals are and ways that you can also learn with me and study with me to kind of deepen in your integration of this information in your own life. So the equinox is the first portal. And what's significant about this is not only is it a cardinal shift, so we're talking about the sun moving into the sign of Aries, which in the northern hemisphere is the start of spring. In the southern hemisphere, it's the start of fall. It's an initiatory energy. It initiates Aries season, which in the astrological community is the beginning of the year. It's like the start of the new year. But this particular year, we have the nodes in the sign of Aries and Libra. So we have this north node energy, which is being initialized at this time because Mars becomes the ruler of the sun. And so what does the sun reflect, right? Our solar purpose, our life force. It's the emanating energy that illuminates all life. And it's moving towards the North Node, which reflects the soul's purpose or intention in this lifetime, right? It's moving away from the South Node, which is that karmic past. We know in evolutionary astrology that planets conjunct the nodes are significant in the life of the individual. Planets squaring the nodes also have significant, indications. But this, we could say, happens to all of us. We all will experience this ingress, this of the sun into Aries, and it's initiating in all of our lives, in all of our charts as a transit. So it's going to play out differently depending on what house or sign, and it's going to be especially significant if you are in the process of having a nodal return, a nodal reversal, which would be the opposite, where you were born with the North Node in Libra and the South Node in Aries. It will also be karmically significant if you're experiencing a nodal square or a planet squaring the nodes, right? And a nodal square would be if you were born with Cancer, Capricorn nodal axis, or planets in Cancer or Capricorn where the nodes are coming to square those planets. I think it's also particularly significant for people who are born with Chiron and Aries. And there's a large segment of people who are born with Chiron and Aries who are experiencing probably one of the longest Chiron returns because of this orbit of Chiron is not linear in the same way that most planetary orbits are. It can spend, Chiron as an asteroid can spend longer periods of time in particular signs, including in the sign of Aries. And, so the equinox marks this starting point. And we are in a particular cycle with the sun and moon at this time, the sun in Aries, the moon in Leo, which happens to be the Pluto polarity point for, the next 20 years, but in particular, at least this year, while Pluto's in the sign of Aquarius. There will be a period of time when Pluto regresses back into Capricorn for the final 6 months in the middle of the year. But that will, be the last time ever that we'll have a Cancer polarity point. So for the most part, this start is a new start relative to our core will, our desires, our life force, and our creative energy, what we're here to actualize. And that life force, we could call it Eros. Eros is the emanating life force of all things. It's inside of us. It's what attracts us. It's what desires because life desires to be expressed through the soul, through us as souls, as creative beings. It doesn't matter what we're called to create. Creation is not just simply being an artist or being an entrepreneur or being a parent, right? There are a myriad of ways in which we create in our lives. And we all have a thread of creation that is connected to the divine will. And we have a thread of connection that is connected to our deeper desires, our will. And some of those desires can be separating desires, right? In the Pluto paradigm, we're working with cooperation and resistance, but we're also working with desires that are separating desires and desires that are returning us to source or reconnecting us with source. And this is the part of the dynamic tension of our lives, right? We are all wanting on some level to actualize that life force energy through us and in us. And we are all often limited in many different ways, whether by life circumstances or our perceptions or, you know, all the different ways in which we can be wounded, especially where Chiron is pointing specifically to the wounds that block us from that actualization. I talked a bit about this in the week ahead in terms of what our desires are. And I've been feeling this so strongly that these eclipses are coming in to clear out whatever is in the way and to bring in, of course, whatever is necessary in order to further that evolutionary growth. So the equinox point is this tipping point, the starting point. And at that time, Mars will be in the sign of Aquarius. Venus, who rules the south node, will be in the sign of Pisces, moving towards Saturn, right? There is a sense of loss and disillusionment in many of our relationships to the desires, or even in our lives, to the desires that we have for love, for connection, for well-being, for to be thriving creatures, right? And connected creatures, connected to the divine, connected to our life purpose, connected to our soul and the core calling of our soul, which, while it's different for each and every one of us and our life experiences are different, we are separate, but not separate. We are unique, but not different, right? In that same way that we are all human and we all come in with a similar, we all come in with a soul's purpose and a soul's intention. And, the Pluto paradigm as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green, the evolutionary journey of the soul, is predominantly what I'm working with, learning with, and teaching with, in addition to my own direct experience and knowledge as an astrologer from studying many different lineages. And a part of what I continue to see and to feel is that these portals of eclipses are bringing in the necessary core soul content and changes, disruptions that can come in the form of crisis or new beginnings or big sweeping changes that come in and change the whole life. And they're often initiating core relationships, right? Many people, including myself, I've given birth to 2 children on or around eclipses. Many people are born around eclipses. If you're particularly one of those people who was born on or around an eclipse, this will magnify for you in your life in terms of the intensity of these portals, and where there's a very clear soul work that is coming in. You almost might say we're getting an initiation of a new chapter of our life. And these chapters are 19-year cycles, right? These are long-term, and the eclipse cycles follow in families and they follow in patterns and they repeat, and you will have been born, if you're born during an eclipse or near an eclipse, with a prenatal eclipse, an eclipse that would have happened just before your birth or on or around your birth, and a postnatal eclipse, right? So those eclipses can be very significant to reflect on in your own life, and they can point to significant particular karmic relationships also that come in. So part of what I'm going to be offering here this next Friday is a masterclass, which is free to my existing students in my Growing Together monthly program and in my private mentorship group. But for those of you who are not in one of those groups, you are welcome to buy a drop-in pass and join me for the live class and receive the recording. And in the live class, we'll be practicing with actual chart examples and looking at these upcoming eclipses. So there will be 4 eclipses in the year 2024. The first 2 are in March and April, and the second 2 are in September and October. And I'm just going to start by very quickly looking here at the March eclipse. We are going to go deeper in the masterclass to these eclipses so that you can apply where the eclipse is happening to your natal chart. And you can see here the North Node is at that 15 degrees. Now, right now, that North Node is at that 15 degrees, right? We're getting into this, we're already in this stationary energy of the nodes, and the sun and the moon are moving towards their connection. An eclipse is the phenomenon of the lunation, either a full moon or a new moon that's happening near these nodal points. Within 10 degrees is what makes it an eclipse. And a penumbral eclipse is it's penumbral. It's basically a partial shadow. It's not a full or total eclipse, but it's a partial and shadowing of. And here we see that is happening with this sun at 5 degrees Aries. So just a few days after the equinox, and the moon at 5 degrees Libra. What's significant to me in this eclipse is that after the eclipse perfects, in the day after or so, we will watch the sun move towards the south node, oppose Chiron, and oppose Mercury, who's in its shadow of its retrograde at this time. What does that mean for us? Well, there's kind of an energy of like sweeping away the things in relationship in our life that are contributing to or still reflecting to us on a deeper soul level the wounds of our vulnerability. This can be as it relates to our relationships with the masculine energy, with our own masculine energy, our drive, our desire, our will, and with that external masculine energy, right? Where, and this, Venus and Mars or the divine lovers, the counterparts. And here we see them right after this eclipse, where Venus is in the sign of Pisces and Mars is also in the sign of Pisces. So there's a softening energetically and a surrendering to a particular divine will that's unfolding relative to our relationships. I talked about it a little bit in the week ahead as kind of a choose your own adventure novel, and how we don't really know what the outcome of any particular relationship is. And this can be reflected in our own lives in many different ways, not just in the loss or the change of a personal romantic relationship. It can be in our career, it can be in our family, it can be in our core purpose, it can be in our relationship to ourselves, right? That will depend on what your rising sign is and where in the house and sign that these eclipses are falling. And so this masterclass is a really great way to get practical, like hands-on working with your own natal chart and being able to see where these things are happening and being able to apply to what the greater unfolding is. Now, a full moon is generally looked at as like a culmination energy or an illumination, right? It's a cycle. And I'll be teaching on the phases that Jeffrey Wolf Green brings forward, but the cycle of the full moon is 180-degree opposition. And what he says here, it's a preparation for the evolutionary intense manifestation. The ego, he says, experiences the full force of other people's wills, desires, and reality in a way to reinforce or enforce the awareness that the drives of others are as strong as the drives of our own, right? We might be feeling very pulled interdirectionally relative to the desires of our own heart and the desires of other people, and where those desires may be in conflict, and where those conflicts create communication conflicts, create breakdowns, create breakthroughs, where we have to heal and or forgive core soul dynamics, where we have to be able to reconcile and reclaim our own sense of purpose and direction in the face of maybe the needs, the emotional needs of others or ourselves. Then we have the next eclipse, which is the April 8th eclipse. And this is a total solar eclipse, a solar eclipse being a new moon eclipse. And this is a new moon on the North Node with Chiron. There's a strong signature here because Mars, the ruler of this North Node, is still in the sign of Pisces, moving to conjunct with Saturn. But also we have Venus, who is the ruler of the South Node, moving towards the North Node. And we have Mercury retrograde. There's such a powerful energy unfolding in this eclipse. And part of what's complicated about predictive astrology, or, astrology relative to the eclipses, one, I'm not God. I don't have a dictate on God's will. While I do feel like I'm a channel and I can often be getting out of my own way and just receiving information or transmitting what I see in the chart. The energy of eclipses is kind of like expect the unexpected, and it's this super intensification of the calling of the soul that it has to evolve. And that's going to be different for each and every person on the planet in terms of their personal will, their desires, how those will and the desires are lined up with God's will, and how well they're working with the resistance and the pieces maybe from the past that have been in the way, and what is trying to take root and begin in their own lives. And this total solar eclipse, I rarely do ritual or ceremony or anything on or around eclipses. They're really days to be going inside and to be self-reflecting. And in this case, to be reflecting on our core wounds and our core desires, and the place where our own authority, where our authority has been given to the past to dictate what is possible for us, and where the healing and the resolution is still needed. And we have to be the kind of courageous agents of our future to really say, I'm going to clear this out of the way. I want to know what, I want to know what love is. I want to know what my power is. I don't want to know what my purpose is. I want to know what my soul is calling me towards. And I want to do whatever is possible to get out of my own way, and to be aligning my will to the divine will so that I can experience that. And in being able to experience that, there's a surrender, there's kind of an ego death that happens, right? But it also is, it is creating something that is deeply healing beyond what we can imagine, right? And we are often limited by what we can imagine. Like if we can't imagine, I talked about this a little bit in the week ahead, if we didn't experience in our childhood a particular kind of experience, it's going to be hard for us to imagine that we are worthy and of deserving of and able to receive that, or hard to know maybe even what that would feel like, because it feels so unfamiliar to our nervous systems, to our identity structure, right? Pluto moving through Aquarius is working with our core identity structure, and the Leo side of that expression is how I see myself, how I see my joy, my creative purpose, my agency, my sovereignty in the world. And if we've been held down by the past, this is a really powerful portal of liberation. So those are a couple of the thoughts that I want to share about this powerful time. You're invited to join me this Friday, March 15th, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Everyone who registers will get the recording. And if you're there present in the live class, I'll be able to work with your chart in order to demonstrate more about these. And I really want to talk about the relationships that come in and out of these portals. I didn't so much speak to it, but oftentimes people do leave this planet during eclipse season. Particularly, I see that more towards south node eclipses. But I sometimes in the interim of eclipse season, and I don't want to scare anyone, but everyone, every day people die on this planet. Every day we lose pets or loved ones, relationships, and things change, right? Loss is a part of our life experience, our human experience. And every day new people come into our lives, and you can, unexpectedly in a moment when you weren't anticipating it, meet the love of your life and be forever changed. You can have someone come into your life. You can give birth to a child on an eclipse and forever have your identity, your life force, your personal direction be changed by that experience. That's what I want to really talk about and break down in these, because these relationships are linked to the nodal axis, which inherently links them to our core soul's purpose and our evolutionary intention. And that's what I'll be going into more as we practice with our own individual charts. So thanks so much for listening to this. As we navigate through this portal of change, it's so important to have practices and ways to keep our feet on the ground, have people supporting us, and really doing the things that anchor us into our strength, our courage, our capacity to know that whatever is coming up is for our healing, even if it hurts, man. Sometimes it does hurt, and sometimes it doesn't always have to hurt, right? Sometimes it can be a beautiful and blissful experience. So also eclipses are not something necessarily to be feared as much as they are to be revered, in terms of looking at the awe of our life and being like, wow, look at how I'm growing. Look at how I'm changing. Look at my own evolutionary journey, and where I'm cooperating with that is where ease and joy and evolution can happen in a more effortless way. And where I'm resisting that is often where, like, those growing edges, where my ego gets triggered, where I get angry or fearful or disillusioned. And I am one of those people. I'm on this journey with you. I'm constantly learning. You see it here. Hopefully, if you're watching this channel, you feel my heart, my vulnerability, and my deep, deep, deep devotion to you and your soul's journey, as well as to my own, because I know that our journey is one. And that if you're here with me on my channel, that you're sharing this journey with me. If you're studying with me, if you do a session with me, if we're working one-on-one together, that we're really sharing in this healing journey. And so my prayer is always for blessings to you on your journey. And thank you so much for being with me. Bye for now.